back to another episode of Digitalk Architects. Today we have with us Chris. Chris, welcome to the show. Please tell us about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. So I'm Chris Wlezien. I'm a mechanical engineer by training turned product innovation consultant. I've been serving clients and a consultant for the last 15 years. I've helped everyone from startups to Fortune 10 companies. I help throughout the whole product development process, from early rapid prototyping to cost optimization to scaling to production. And currently I lead Eureka Partners. It's an engineering design consultancy where I continue to help clients.
Very good. Okay, let's jump into this conversation. So you've gone from mechanical engineering to designing and innovation consultant, working for McKinsey and now for your own consultancy company, Eureka Partners, right? What through line connects those two things, and what stayed consistent in the way you solve complex problems for the companies you're doing work for?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an awesome question. I started as a very traditional mechanical engineer, and actually I kind of knew I wanted to do product innovation and product design work, but it wasn't really clear to me that that was even kind of a career path at the time, certainly when I was in school. So my career has really evolved. So my first role was actually at Caterpillar doing like a very traditional design engineering job. I spent a year not being a consultant before I found the right opportunities. So I've always been doing design engineering. And I think that's one of the things that really kind of separates me and helps me be very successful is my first design engineering role at Radius Product Development. I was there for about 5 years. I did a ton of CAD work, a ton of like detailed technical work. I sat next to the injection molding machine to make parts. And so I learned a lot of like hands-on, very practical, applicable engineering, product design, innovation, research skills. And so that's made me more and more valuable the further I've gotten in my career, the more senior I've gotten now that I'm working with McKinsey. So I can advise senior level clients, but also have like those practical chops to know how to actually solve the problems. So I've kind of transitioned from more of a, 2,000 hours a year doer to an advisor. And it's been really invaluable because I'm still solving the same problems. I'm just solving them kind of at a higher level and helping clients make the right strategic decisions so that when they actually go to solve the problem, they are more successful.
That's a good transition. So you still advise for McKinsey, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now you kind of also do your own consultancy on the side. How did that shift change your perspective on innovation, speed, client impact, and obviously your work-life balance?
Yeah, and I would say every time I had a major transition in my career, I've changed those perspectives, and I feel like I've had more nuance, every step along the way. So kind of while I was at McKinsey, I learned how to be extremely impact focused, focusing on the most important problems. I learned how to run really, really quickly. So like I mentioned, kind of before, and actually I spent about 9 years in McKinsey as a full-time employee, but before that, I really spent, months to years working on the same project, developing it from like napkin sketch all the way to production. Whereas when I was at McKinsey, I would take a much kind of broader, shorter view. So I try to go in, understand the problems as they exist today, and help them along. So speed was just kind of everything. And transitioning kind of out of McKinsey to a McKinsey advisor as well as a startup advisor, I try to bring those perspectives of speed and focusing on impact with me. So really, yeah, throughout my career, my perspectives kind of evolved, but really it's just about being faster, making better decisions. And honestly, at this point too, now I always try to make contingency plans. So if I am focusing on, let's say we're trying to optimize a product for cost, and we're trying to change it from, and let's pick a really traditional example. We're trying to change it from like die casting to injection molding. So from a expensive metal part to a lower cost plastic part. That process, depending on who you ask, could arguably take a year or more, depending on like who the client is and what they're working on. But I've learned ways to find faster suppliers that can do it in weeks, even potentially. So I really always now try to think about like, what is the most impactful thing you can do at any given time? So in that example, it's about like reducing the cost and maybe improving the reliability of a specific component. And then how, now that you know that's worth doing, you should do it as quickly as feasible to find those savings, to make those cost improvements, to get the product launched, whatever your goal is. So yeah, my perspective has really changed, and now I'm like all about speed and impact at the same time. And really, those things I'm trying to highlight are not mutually exclusive. Like if it's worth doing, it's worth doing quickly, effectively. And then on the work-life balance side, that is something I've also appreciated a lot more. I have 2 young kids now, and I'm so glad that I can be running my own firm and have more flexibility. It's more
Mhm.
flexibility than I've ever had because I still maintain those like short programs where maybe I'm super, super busy for 1 or 2 weeks, but now I have some downtime where I can work on my own startup or spend more time with my family. So I really do appreciate that as being my own boss effectively, but it certainly comes with its challenges as well. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but it
Never
is.
is. The challenges are just different. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so you mentioned that you've worked with some pretty big companies, but you're also now working a lot more with startups, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about what that looks like, especially because with startups, they rarely have
Mhm.
deep pockets and budgets. What are some of your minimum viable engineering rules that help turn ideas into actual products without burning through a ton of capital?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think I can answer this probably 100 different ways. So maybe let's start on the
Start
product
with one.
execution. Let's start on the execution. I would also like to talk about lean research at some point,
Okay.
but on
Yeah.
like the product execution side, especially for smaller teams and startups, man, I've had this conversation so many times, and I think the answer really is like try to do as much of it you can yourself as possible, because there's always this trade off for like
Okay.
large companies or even established small to medium sized startups that are funded. The conversation is like, well, what is the best way we can use our resources to maximize our output and reduce our timelines? Like I was just talking about speed a minute ago. Like how can we go faster and spend money to get to savings or to get to launch or to get to something faster? But for that, leaner startup, I would honestly argue to kind of do things slower, but yourself, because you have limited resources and there's always something you're going to need to pay someone to do. So, like for me and the people I'm advising, they tend to have either industrial design or engineering backgrounds. So, I certainly advise them to just do all of that work themselves, even if you're a senior level and typically have team members working with you on your startup. The rules have changed. Like your budget is limited. You're going to need that for advertising, and I guess for any product effectively, like you need ad spend. So I would say reserve as much of your capital as possible for the things you absolutely cannot do, and try to do everything yourself. And then you can pay experts to get it over the hump or review your content. So I'm helping a startup now that's working on like a full brand guideline, and yeah, we're encouraging them to do like all of the work themselves effectively, and then just bring in experts at the end to review everything and make sure it's up to par. Because if you think about it, if you paid a firm to develop the whole thing, it might be very challenging. If you bring in experts, like key road milestones, you can kind of guide the process. So yeah, in general, overarching, do it yourself. And on the physical product side specifically, like I think that's also including like getting your own 3D printer and building your own stuff. I've seen a lot of startup founders who want to make a physical item that are not traditionally skilled in engineering, but it's so easy to get these CAD tools and to get a 3D printer now. It's a couple $100s and start making your own
Yeah.
stuff, and it's way more cost effective than paying an engineering firm to develop it, and which is like tens of thousands of dollars on the low end. So
Uh
yeah, I
huh.
think on the execution side, there's a lot of things, but my overarching comment is just like to do more.
So on that note, and I know that's a longer conversation, but I want to. So when you and I first met, we were talking about. Actually, you said something. You said many things. Many firms think they know what customers want until they actually ask them, and then they find out not so much, or maybe, or it could go many ways. But how do you structure your like that discovery to bridge that gap between perception and reality when these startups are considering or thinking about their product?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's super important. In general, I think I don't want to throw a number out, but a vast majority of companies do not talk to customers enough. And it's across the entire spectrum. Some of my largest companies that I've served fail at it because they think they know their customers so well, because they're the incumbent. They've been making, cars, for example. They've been making cars since the beginning. They think they know what their customers want better than anyone else. But yeah, like the story I was mentioning is that every time we go into research, we learn something. Our customers learn something about their customers that they never expected. And for leaner organizations, it's even more important, especially startups, because you have everything to learn effectively about your customer. Like when I talk about like a Fortune 10 or Fortune 500 company, we're talking about like very small nuances of things that are changing in the market typically. So like if it's a consumer packaged goods client making a food product, maybe, like the winds have shifted and now consumers are interested in like natural preservatives. So that's like the big learning typically. But for a
Hmm.
startup, it's like everything is the learning. They're learning everything about what their customers want. So in that context, I always advise to like get products into consumers' hands as soon as possible. So even for my startup, like we're working on like making concept sketches and renders and just talking to people. I think we all should be designing stuff that we're passionate about. It's really great if you can use your own products and experience them and have your own perspective, but you kind of have to leave that at the door at some point and start, really just listening to what other people say, because it's really easy to be biased in our own perspective, especially for the products and the things we're developing. So yeah, I think like really as early as possible. So even if you're developing an app, build a wireframe and show your friend who might be interested, or a family member even. And professionally speaking, I've even served some like fairly well funded startups, not quite unicorns, but fairly well funded startups. And they even need help. Like we call it guerrilla research or guerrilla, experience, where we
Hmm.
kind of go in and say, okay, well, you don't have that much budget for this activity, but let's go just talk to 10 people and we'll email blast their community and say like, oh, does anyone want to talk to us? Or, and I find personally that qualitative research where you're actually talking to people could almost be more beneficial than quantitative research, because quantitative research is
Okay.
actually quite cheap now, where you can send out a poll and
Hmm.
get feedback. But if you do qualitative research, or we do what we call like shop alongs, where let's say
Hmm.
you're making a new type of like home improvement, like a new type of power drill, we'll go with
Okay.
potential customers who are thinking about buying power drills to the power drill aisle of the store and ask them questions about what they're seeing, what they're interested in, what they're looking at. And those conversations are extremely beneficial because they help us understand what's on the customer's mind, what they're thinking about, what price points they're actually considering. I have a tremendously good case study to share where we did like a mock shop like this, like a shop along type
Hmm.
experience. And we created a store where we had competitors' products on the shelves. And we asked customers to pick from a couple of concepts we developed, as well as with competitors. And they kept saying things on the power drill side of, oh, I want a power drill with more power or more battery life, or, I don't care what it looks like. We're talking like people in the construction and trades. They would say
Hmm.
things like that, like, oh, I don't care what it looks like. I want something that's really powerful that'll get the job done. But sure enough, while shopping along with them, they tended to gravitate toward the drills that had better graphics and were more visually interesting and looked like they were more exciting. And they wouldn't say that. You would never get that in a quantitative poll. But in qualitative research, just talking to these consumers, we learned something that they might not even know about themselves, frankly. And I see this time and time again. So yeah, I think really there's never a bad time to start asking consumers what they think and showing them your products and getting them excited and seeing what really resonates with them. Because at the end of the day, that's like what you really need to focus on. And yeah, I've seen a lot of like companies and startups fail or make mistakes because they just don't have enough experience. And one final thing I want to add on this topic though is that I also think it becomes kind of self-evident in some ways, because as you do this, as you interview people, like I'm in quantitative research, like my clients might want like an N of 1,000, like at least 1,000 people taking a survey. But when we do
Hmm.
qualitative research, after we talk to like a few, like 3, 5, 10 people, the 20th person usually says it like 90% of what we've already heard. So it doesn't mean you have to talk to 100 different people. You might just be able to talk to 3 people and get like a really general perspective. It's always shocked me at like how few people you need to talk to that are in your target market and your target consumer that are going to give you the feedback that's like representative of the whole. So you don't have to kill yourself talking to 100 people. You could talk to like literally 10 people and be pretty comfortable.
Okay, so let me ask you on that, because like you're saying, you have the the numbers never lie.
Mhm.
um and clients are so used to go get 1,000 yes or no's or all
Yep.
that stuff. How do they feel when you do these more of that are not necessarily numbers but opinions, and in your sample is so small? Do they come back and give you a hard time on it, or are they still okay with a smaller sample number?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the context. So, for
Hmm.
example, we were working with a food client recently, and before they launched new product, they had to test it, and it had to go through their standard process of sampling, a few hundred people. I actually don't know the exact number, but it's their standard process. And this is why I tell clients, no matter what we're talking about, is like you should always confirm everything with your approved process to reduce your risks.
Right.
But if you're trying to learn new things, I think you can take whatever approach makes the most sense. And so, yeah, we might talk to a few people, get a really interesting perspective, and that might give us enough confidence to just kind of take it forward to the next step. Because, like I was saying about like having contingency plans, I don't think it's ever been a bad thing. Like maybe to your point, a client might say, "Oh, well, I'm not convinced yet." But luckily, you have all of your traditional processes or the traditional way of doing things, even if you don't have any processes in place. Like you can do things the traditional way later to like double check. But in my experiences, getting like fast, quick insights that help like guide the conversation are invaluable, as opposed to the waiting to the very end to learn that like, hey, actually, no one likes this. Like that sample of 3 people that you talked to in the beginning that like saw that new package or tried that new food or tried that power drill could provide you some like incredibly valuable insights, so that when you do test with 100 or 1,000 people later, it's not a failure and you have to go back to ground zero. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's like absolutely 100% definitive, but it's certainly better than like nothing, which is like the traditional approach is like very little insight in the beginning.
Okay. So you have a unique position in the sense that you work with startups, but most of what you are doing and the consulting you're doing is not the normal startup that we look at nowadays, that it's like technologies and mostly software based.
Mm-hmm.
You are mostly working with startups that are launching physical products,
Yep.
right? And that
Yep.
makes them unique, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot less of that nowadays. Actually, we just don't hear as much about it. Which go to market strategies actually work for product based startups? And are you working with like pre-orders, funding, pilot partnerships? What drains resources? What boosts resources? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, even still, okay. So yeah, I want to make one comment first on like the hardware versus
Go.
software piece. So one thing I have like actively decided, and like as we talked about before, I've actively decided to focus on hardware. It's where I was traditionally trained. It's where I've spent all my time, and it's where my love is. But I certainly feel what you said, where it seems like software is kind of eating the world, so to speak. Certainly on the investment side, that's where like all the excitement is, and I'm sure we'll talk
Yeah,
about it at some point. But like AI is just the next step of that, and I use AI a lot in my job actually to help me develop
we'll
better
get to that
hardware.
in a minute.
We will certainly get to that in a minute.
We're working ourselves up to that point.
Um, but on the hardware side specifically, I think it is just a really valuable question. And I don't know if there is like one roadmap anymore, especially for startups, on what to do. I think it just highly depends on your product, how marketable it is, where you're selling it, to who you're selling it. So, for example, like if I work with an incubator in Chicago, an accelerator in Chicago called M Hub, and they are constantly working on kind of a split, but more focusing on B2B sales. So just like in like the software SaaS B2B
Hmm.
side, on the hardware side, B2B is much less risky as well, because you could develop a partnership, build prototypes that are like entirely 3D printed, or you know do simulations, as opposed to like tooling it up for hundreds of thousands of dollars to make production units. Or you could even make like short run, we call it like CNC or You
Yeah.
basically, like, everyone knows additive manufacturing now, where you build from the ground up, but you can take like a block and machine it into the part. And you would never do that in production, but you could do a couple of prototypes to build confidence, and then you can effectively go sell those to a business, get one contract, which can help you get the wheels turning. So
Right.
if you're B2B, I actually think it's probably pretty similar to the software development side. If you're B2C, if you're developing consumer products or direct to consumer, which is now very exciting, and I think a lot of hardware companies are doing, where you launch on your own website and sell direct to consumers, you have some more challenges. And honestly, there have been a lot of advancements in 3D printing recently: speed of prints, higher quality prints, lots of different materials. You can 3D print with a home desktop printer in metals now, and in rubbers now, and all sorts of things. So I think there are ways to make products faster and cheaper. And you could try to do like beta testing without actually tooling anything up, making production units, or even get like some pilot products sold. Like, I know some people who focus on sales, and they love just kind of starting with make 5 units and sell those and learn from them. And those could be like entirely 3D printed, for example. So I think it really just depends. Specifically on like the pre-order side, I think Kickstarter is still like a great platform to use, but it has like a
Hmm.
pretty limited, like, I've actually talked to quite a few people who've done Kickstarters recently. It has a pretty limited customer base, which doesn't necessarily translate out of Kickstarter. Like, people who are on that platform are on that platform because they like to be, and it doesn't mean your sales are just going to kind of continue once you get off the platform, even if you've had success on that platform. But yeah, I
I
really
had
think it
one
just,
good experience and one really bad experience with Kickstart. So
there you go, exactly. But all the people I've talked to basically said, like, even if they had a really good experience, it like their sales didn't continue the moment they closed their Kickstarter campaign. They had to start brand new sales channels and marketing and
well, but
advertising.
that
So I
makes
guess that
sense,
is,
right? Like that kind of, I think the point of Kickstart is to kickstart your sales, but not like you still have to do all the other stuff, right? Which is kind of like
exactly.
the
Yeah,
next
there's like a,
step.
exactly.
But
But I
see,
think
I think
it's
go
always
ahead.
just out of left field. It's always out of left field for them, though, because I think they see all this great traction on Kickstarter and say, oh, everyone loves this product. They're so excited. We're going to do great. And then the Kickstarter ends and that's it. They get like no more sales. And they ask why. But to your point, exactly, because it's a different market, and it's a different sales structure, and you're advertising differently. So I guess that'd be my one big push in learning recently is, if that's the right approach for you, it's great. But the sooner you can get to your like traditional sales channels, to like winning people on social and on your Shopify and
I was gonna
selling
say,
products, yeah, the
yeah,
better,
like
because
I
that's
think the
going to be your
mistake is
long
thinking. I think the mistake is in thinking that because you did great in Kickstart, then you don't have to do anything else. I think the way to solve for that is, as you are, as you're starting and doing your Kickstart, you're
term.
ramping up all your other efforts almost simultaneously
Yeah,
instead of
yeah,
waiting for that to end.
or yeah, just have a plan
So that
effectively.
when you finish Kickstart, your other channels have already started working for you and taking
Yeah, exactly.
advantage of that success, because you can promote your success on Kickstarter, right? Well, if you let it kind of end, then now you don't have kind of that proof, right? It's
Yeah,
done,
no,
it's over
absolutely.
with, right? So if
I have a
if you
I
take
have a
advantage of
theory.
that, then yeah.
I have one theory. I have not seen enough data points to prove it yet, so it might be terrible. But I have one theory
Hmm.
that like referrals might be the bridge between a pre-sale or a Kickstarter and like production, like ongoing sales, because like those people are your champions. So like using them to get referrals, which is a very traditional marketing strategy that could translate to, long-term forever sales. I haven't seen enough do it, and I haven't talked to any people who have done it. Wildly. I haven't talked to enough people who've tried it even. But that's my current theory is like referrals and word of mouth could be like the next step. So you still have to do all the traditional advertising, because at the end of the day, one
I do agree.
incredibly impactful piece of advice someone gave me once on launching a new product was that you have to think about it as every set of eyeballs, every individual you sell to in the digital space is fresh. They're experiencing your ads
Hmm.
for the first time. They're likely scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and they see your ad, and it's the first time they've heard of your company. So each sale is work, effectively. And
Yeah.
I think, like, yeah, that's like why Kickstarter is a little different, because it's on a platform and it's being shared with the community and all sorts of stuff. But once
It's a
you move
little
away from that
gated,
platform,
right?
yeah,
So, yeah, and because it's gated, the people you get are willing to invest in one off,
exactly.
right?
Yep.
But just like with everything, speaking from the marketing perspective. You have your, I call them rings, right? So
Hmm.
you have your initial ring is like that first 100 that will trust you
Uh,
or
sure,
that
sure.
know you, right? But once you finish with that first ring, you gotta move to the second ring, right? So which that would
Mhm.
be either your referral network making that ring bigger, moving you up a step, basically. But then once you get past the first and the second ring, the first ring is basically your connections. The second ring is your referrals from your connections. That's the people that are within reach, right? But as a business person, startup person, you have to be able to get past that second ring, which then brings you to how are you going to reach the the people that don't know you or have
Yeah,
been referred to you, right? So
yeah,
now you're talking advertising, marketing, all that stuff, because now you have to. So the first two rings are people that know you or know of you, right?
yeah,
that
absolutely.
that bigger ring is no, but they don't know you
Yeah,
or
it's a
of you.
huge.
Now you have to reach the unknown and make them know you and like you enough to come and buy from you, your company, your product, whatever. And that doesn't happen with one touch point, right? The reality of marketing and sales is you need, we say, anywhere between 5 to 11 touch point
Okay.
to be able to people to get familiar. So the way
Wow.
it
Okay.
works is the touch points are they've seen you, they've heard of you, they've seen an ad, and they've seen, in many cases, we call it, kind of a 360 approach.
Yeah.
So you outreach them with an email, but then they see one of your ads in one platform, and then they see you in another platform. I've seen this person. I remember that name. And then they see you again, the next day. That's three or four or five. And then they go to another platform and suddenly they see your name again. I'm like, oh, I saw them in that other one. Now I'm familiar with them, right? And then you hit them again with another email. I'm like, oh yeah, you emailed me and I saw your ad and I saw these and I saw your content. Now I'm familiar with you. Now I'm comfortable enough to know you're legit, right? So now I can go and explore further. Or maybe, they saw the ad, they've already heard your name, they've seen your email, they clicked on it, they've seen your website, right? They explore your website but didn't buy. They're not comfortable yet. But now on that fifth email or touch point or whatever it is, now they're like, okay, maybe I'm getting warm up to this idea. Now I'm gonna go again to the website, right? And now I'm gonna probably buy. Or you get, after so many touch points, you get that, hey, you were in our website. Why did you leave? Or did you see something you like and you get some of the things you were exploring? And now you're like, oh, now I want to really buy it, right? Because now I've
Yeah.
seen you everywhere. And that's how you warm up to that bigger ring, right?
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. I have a couple of comments for sure. So one thing I think is like super interesting in this space and in this context specifically is kind of the technology adoption life cycle, which is kind of the when
Yes.
you look at all consumers, there's this histogram of consumers where you know 2-3% of them are like the innovators that'll try new stuff, and they're like
Yes.
always excited about trying new things. That's like the whole Kickstarter community effectively is like the
Yes.
innovators, and
Yeah.
then you have like the early adopters or like the next like 13-14% of people who are willing to try new stuff, but they're not the first people. They're like the trendsetters, they're the
Hmm.
influencers, and then you have this like whole collection of people. So one thing I always recommend is even with what you're talking about is like really focus on those first like 15% of people.
A
Like
hundred
focus,
percent.
think about them because like sure maybe your long-term market is the majority of people, but in reality you need those first people to make that purchase. So how can you tailor it to them? How can you make it more exciting to them? What are they interested in? How are they different from like your long-term core of customers? Because yeah, you can't be a successful company without being a successful startup. So you really have to start with those people first. And then to your comment as well about like how much of a hurdle it is to get from like the second ring to the third ring. I think like One thing to consider too is, like you mentioned, like all these different, emails and follow-ups and touch points and exposure to your brand. I
So
think a little bit
important.
depends on the product, and I consider it almost an educational challenge. So when you
Absolutely.
have
Yeah.
a very existing, well understood product, like I always use toilet paper as the ultimate commodity product. So if you're making toilet paper, there's no
Yeah,
education.
so
It's just a
true.
commodity
No, yeah,
product.
like everybody knows.
So it's not so hard. Like it probably wouldn't take as many emails to get someone to buy your toilet paper. But like when it's a completely revolutionary new product, it's much harder. So I like to think of the marketing as like educating the consumer on what are you actually developing and why is it important to this consumer, and why should they be excited about it, and what are the apprehensions. I've noticed like that's probably understated more often than it should. Is that I think a
Yeah.
lot of consumers see the impact and they're like, oh, I would love to have that, but then they have core apprehensions like, oh, it's too expensive, so you need to do like a Van
Mm-hmm.
Westerdorp analysis to figure out what the right cost is, or oh, is it gonna break? So like, how can you communicate that it's gonna be durable? Kind of trust this company. How do you communicate trust? And I think that's what you're really
Mm-hmm.
trying to overcome with all of those touch points, is to like
Yeah. So it's a
break
little bit
down
of
the apprehensions.
education and also building up excitement, right?
Mhm.
And it's a balance because you want to
Yeah.
get them on all those touch points, you want to get them excited about the product or why they need them. And I'm actually I'm gonna use this example because I think they've actually done a really good job. So there's this brand, I buy it, right? And I came across them just as an ad, and it
Hmm.
piqued my interest. And just as I said it, because the process doesn't change. I saw it the first time. I'm like, this looks interesting, and I've never heard of the brand, but
Okay.
I really liked what I was seeing. And so just to put it in perspective, so this brand, it's a brand that's a little bit different. They build pants,
Okay.
but
Sure.
they're very unique. So they're basically they're targeting people like me, right? I sit down all day, but I'm also at home because I work from home most of the time, right?
Okay.
But I do this, so I have to be always dressed to be on camera day in and day out because I have 1,000 meetings all the time. So I like to be dressed, nice, but I like to be comfortable. So anyways, I see the brand one time, it's appealing. So next thing I see it somewhere else, and I see it somewhere else, and I'm like, oh, now I'm like really interested, right? So what's the first thing is like, okay, so I've seen it one and I stayed on the ad, so they knew that I was interested enough to
Yep.
stay. Then
Targeted
they
ad. Yep.
targeted me in multiple platforms so I could see it in, more than once. So now I've clicked into this thing and I've browsed through it, but I did not buy. So then obviously the targeting gets heavier because now I've clicked and I browsed through their collection, right?
Yep. For sure. Yep.
So then they moved me into, I've put a couple of things in my cart. So now they have enough information about me. I get a reminder, hey, you left some things in your cart. I'm not decided, yet on whether I want to buy this thing or not, but interested enough to fill the cart, right?
Oh, for sure.
So then,
Yeah. And
so then I go and I clicked, and I buy one thing just to try it out, right? And then the gates open, right? And now that the ads won't stop. They're everywhere, but every time I see it, I get excited about something new that's come out of that brand.
yeah. Yeah. And I have to make two comments. So the first is on that topic specifically, it is
Hmm.
so much more cost effective. Like I was actually just listening to a talk on this yesterday, to get a current customer to purchase another one of
Yes.
your products, or to upsell them, or to just get them to repurchase.
Hmm.
Like we always talk about cost of customer acquisition, but I think it's like
Yes.
CRC,
Agree.
cost of customer retention, something like that. It's so much lower.
No.
So yeah, for sure. Once you're in, they really want you to be a loyal customer. That's why all these loyalty programs exist. That's
Yep.
yeah, because that's like at the end of the day, you have to think about lifetime value, right? It's like sure, the first purchase, especially for like lower cost of good items, like the first purchase might be pretty low. The ad spend you have to get them to make that first purchase might be more than the revenue of that purchase, frankly.
Not necessarily, because then you're
Oh, okay.
talking channels, right? Because then you're talking channels. So if they're targeting me, and this it's a great conversation for products and everything, but it depends, right? Because I mean, probably one of the cheapest channels to advertise is Meta, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Right now, Meta and TikTok are probably the cheapest at the moment, right? So they find me on Meta. They target me with, X number of ads for a period of time, right? Their cost is going to be low, right? So they cover the cost of ads probably with my first purchase. Because I
Okay.
guarantee you on that product, that purchase, and it wasn't cheap, right? Like we're not talking cheap pants that these
Oh,
are
sure. Yeah.
quality, you know, um, $60 to $80 pants, that are. I call them pants that feel like leggings. That's the type of comfort, right? So
Okay.
because I'm a jeans kind of person. I like the look, but I don't like the feel of traditional jeans. They're uncomfortable, right? So I went and I bought one pair. I can guarantee you they've made that money over and over on me because I
Okay.
have now completely redone my closet, like my
Oh,
pants section, to be
awesome.
only that, right? Because I
Yeah.
can be completely dressed up in the comfort of leggings at home. And then if I need to go out to meetings, I'm already there anyways, right? Like I'm
Absolutely.
already
Yep.
dressed to. So anyway, so my point with that was it's not necessarily expensive. Sure, not everybody's going to buy to that extent, right? And not every purchase is going to convert into like hundreds and hundreds of dollars right away. But once the cost of recurring customers, right? Once they have one purchase and they're invested in your brand, you don't even need to advertise to them because they're going to come back anyways, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
They
for sure.
have to
And
see you once in a while, but you're not going to have to spend nearly as much money on them as you did before.
yeah, and I do have to make one comment. It's like an awesome segue. But one kind of recommendation I've heard, and it's really stuck with me, especially for startups or new products, even brand new to world products, even for existing companies, is you really want to make sure it's significantly better than anything else out there.
Yes.
Like you don't want to invent a new toilet paper that's 3% better than the old toilet paper because there was like I don't know, there's no hard and fast number, but I like to say like a 25% conversion cost, where like to make a
Yeah.
customer switch from their current to the new, it has to be at least 25% better. So I tell everyone, if you're working on something that's brand new, it should be at least 10 times better than the last version, the other version, your
Yeah.
competitor,
Yeah.
because you have to make them convert. And then once they do convert, like you said, they love the pants. They're sold. You have to make a high quality product, and that's one thing I get really excited about being a designer
To keep them,
engineer
yes.
is make good products that keep them. So then like word of mouth is good. Reviews mean everything now. Like at McKinsey when I was
I was going to say
full
that.
time, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
we did, yeah.
thinking of me as a customer, right? Like it wasn't just that I went and bought one and then I bought many more, but the referral, right? You know how many people I've talked to about these pins that are now buying these pins?
Mm-hmm.
I've made them
That's amazing.
probably a ton of money just on referring them to buy that product, right? And
This
I'll
is
be one of those champions, right? To make the case right there.
and yeah, and this is fundamentally why I think like the innovator and someone who really wants to make something new, good, or better, exciting, awesome has a really good shot, because like you can drop ship every imaginable pair of pants. But like
Yeah.
if you go on Alibaba, just pick some random pants and drop ship them, no one's gonna like them. They're gonna be awful, right? There's still a lot of room for people who want to make amazing stuff that's really good. And frankly, I would
100%.
say more often than not, if you have a good cost lens, because at the end of the day, I do a ton of cost optimization. It's more than 50% of my work. If you have a cost lens and you care about quality, I think you can make like very competitive products, because it's very, very expensive. Like my medical clients, it's very expensive to make like high quality
100%.
products that are not cost optimized. I've seen medical pliers that cost more than like a couple $100s to make. So imagine what they're charging,
Really, yeah.
hospitals and patients to use. But if you cost optimize them, you can make a really nice pair of pliers that a consumer would pick up on shelf at Home Depot that are better than all the other pliers out there and actually are pretty competitive on cost. So I think it's also really important to have that cost lens, because you 100% want that experience you had with those pants. Like you want them to be awesome, groundbreaking, like the best ever. But you also need to make them, cost effective, so that so that your company can be successful as a business. You need some margin to keep your lights on. You can't, so yeah, it's a nice balance, but I think it's actually very doable. I think it can be very overwhelming for startups and very hard in the beginning, but it's very doable.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't tell you, like, I know we talked a little bit about like what are some of the biggest mistakes startups make. I think one of the biggest ones is not keeping their costs of their product in line. It's way
Check.
easier for software companies. So on the software side, you hear it on like the server cost, the operating cost side a little bit, but on the physical product side, it's even worse, where like costs just go like completely out of control. I've actually worked with some very large, very successful startups that have like really significant cost issues. So like getting those under
Really?
control really is like really, really important. Sorry to like derail the conversation to cost, but I
No,
think
no,
like
no, no,
that's the
no.
other
This
side
is
of the
it's good.
equation.
Yeah, but I can see it. But well, because again, it's the same conversation, right? Like physical product is so different than software product, right? So some of the things that you have to account for are significantly
Yeah, yeah, but like I was saying though, I
different
do
in
know like,
cost.
I've talked to some software people, leaders of software companies recently, and their costs are pretty high as well, like AWS
Oh no,
costs
yeah,
and
yeah. Oh, I know.
managing data. And I talked to one company in particular that was making like a smart water bottle. I think I can say that. That's not too crazy. And their costs were out of control because they didn't have a subscription model. So every
Hmm.
sale was great, but it incurred a lifetime of cost managing the data and keeping the devices connected. So that's like why so many more like hardware IoT devices are coming with subscription model. One of the reasons why. Obviously, investors love subscriptions as well, but yeah, it's it is expensive to keep like
Investors,
these
yes.
devices
Consumers,
online.
not so much.
Well, yes, that's true. Consumers, not so much. But again, like
Consumers,
it's
not so much.
expensive. Like if you
There
buy a
will come a time. Yeah, there will come a time where I can see it coming. Subscription fatigue. Like we have so many things now that
yeah,
people are just gonna stop. I'm like, if I don't need it and I can live without, I won't pay for it. Right. On
I mean, how
that
many ads?
topic, I know it's crazy. Like I was just having this conversation, which ties into this. The consumer in the subscription model for just about everything, but we were talking about cars in particular, and I don't know if you've heard, but some of these cars are coming out with
Yeah,
subscriptions for a bunch
yeah,
of things, right? So before you bought your car, you use your car, that you pay for your car, that was the end of it. Now you're going to pay for the car, but now they also want you to pay for a subscription, and that's coming in different ways. So one I've heard of that is new is, I believe, is I can't remember if it's Audi or anyone, a European car maker. I believe it's coming out where the car comes set up to X, horsepower, I think is what it is.
yeah.
And if you want to unlock the extra power, you pay a subscription. So it gives you, X number of extra horsepower with your
Yep.
subscription. The other one I heard of is BMW was charging a subscription for your hitting on your seats. GM just released this other thing. They're not going to use Apple Car services. They're going to have their own thing, and it's going to be a subscription specific to them.
Oh
So
no.
you
Yep.
guys like, okay, so now I have a subscription for that. So I have my car payment, if most people do, right? But on top of that, now you're going to charge me to use the things that were part of my car payment not long ago.
Yeah.
So, it is creating a huge economic problem
Yeah. I'm
in a
sure
model.
on like the impact side, like I'm sure it makes sense. But I've literally had this exact conversation with my wife because our Toyota has a subscription to use the auto start feature, which is
Yes,
particularly
I have
nice
the
in a
same thing.
cold Chicago winter. And
Yes.
it's interesting because like the cost of a vehicle is so high. And like I
Hi.
know like the margins are actually not as high as you might think in
You'll be
some ways.
surprised.
But
You'll be
yeah,
surprised.
even still, yeah, I mean, the cost to make the vehicle is actually surprisingly low. I've done a lot of automotive
Yeah.
work, but regardless, like, a subscription almost like of $10 a month seems almost inconsequential when you compare it to the price of a vehicle. But like, if you think about like the
But
Ring
when you have
camera,
millions paying
well,
$10 a
yeah,
month, it's very,
I guess that's why.
very, yeah.
Yeah,
But the
but like on
point
like the
to that is like, the things that were granted, we took for granted before, are now all these subscriptions, right?
mm,
It's like the the other one was, when you just watch TV, right? You had your antenna and you just watched TV. Then came cable and you were paying for cable and you had all the channels, but you had to
yep,
watch ads. Listen,
yep,
this one most people will relate. Then Netflix came, and we had Netflix, and we all got, sort of attached to Netflix because we could binge watch a bunch of shows and not have ads and just pay a very small subscription. So everybody, went and got their different, pay subscriptions. So now you have Netflix and Disney, and all of them have now some sort of pay subscription. So now you can't, and cable went up and removed channels,
Yeah.
right? So now
Yep.
you can't watch all of it on cable. And if you want to watch it, you have to pay for a number of different subscriptions, right? But wait, the reason why you did this was so you didn't have to watch ads, but now the subscriptions
Now
are
there's no
adding
ads.
ads back on.
Yep.
So
Unless you
now
pay
what's
them
the
more.
point?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. No,
So now you're
it's
screwed.
very interesting, and I definitely think like the subscription fatigue is 100% real. Like there's so many subscription removal companies now that help you like figure out how many subscriptions you have and get rid of them. But one thing I have to say on this topic though is it's a very telling example of like consumer impact and value. Because at the end of the day, I actually don't think subscriptions are fundamentally bad if you're getting value out of them. Like
Yes.
I happily pay for YouTube Premium because that's like one of my
Me
main
too.
sources of
That is one
information.
I would never get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. It's so good. It's like for me and my family, it's worth like $20 a month, like hands
I
down
agree.
in our application.
Hands down.
And so I think it actually explains things. Whereas like we don't have cable. We haven't had cable in forever, effectively, because it just doesn't have the value anymore. And I think like subscriptions or smaller transactions that reinforce impact and value are actually a better value for consumers. Like if you have that lens of like, well, I'm paying $300 a month in subscriptions, that's too much. I mean, in some ways that's fair, but are you getting like well over $300 a month in value? Because like that
It's fair.
$20 YouTube subscription I have and that Amazon Prime I have are
Oh yeah.
well worth it for me.
Well,
Like extremely
absolutely.
well worth it. I will never get rid of those. And it's
I
better than the
agree.
alternatives. So I think like maybe as a consumer we just need to think about which ones have a lot of value and are they worth it? Because
Yeah,
at the end of
I
the day,
agree.
your rent is a subscription kind of, and like of course
Kind
your
of.
house is worth
So
it.
is yours.
Like maybe it's not worth that much, but you need a place to live.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I think like in some ways the conversation should be more around value, and like if it doesn't bring you value, don't do it. And then for your startups, and other companies are trying to like, think about launching new subscriptions. How can we like assess like what the true value is for the consumer, and can we make the business work on our end? Because yeah, at the end
Well,
of the
and
day, it should
sell
be
the value, right?
yeah,
The
exactly,
most,
always.
most important thing in, yeah, I think for startups and any business is sell the value, not the product. And if you're
Absolutely.
selling some sort of subscription, make the case as to why it's worth it, right? Instead of,
Exactly.
hey, this comes with a subscription, because most people are going to go, another one.
Yeah. And I have to say, because it's something that like and again, not an expert in the field, but something I heard that I love is instead of even selling the value, sell the transformation. So it's
Yes.
like, you're what is this product helping you become? And yeah, that is huge. Like to me, it's like
And
Amazon makes me more efficient because I can get things I need the next day. Anything I need in the world, I can get the next day. So it's like makes me a more
100%.
efficient person. And yeah, I think that's like really, really key is like what's that value of that feature, that value of that service, that value of that transformation to the consumer.
I agree. All right, I'm going to do one more. We have
Sure,
maybe time for one more. And this
let's
one
do
is
it.
going to, because we said we were going to get to it, and now we're almost at the end, and we didn't. So let's talk AI in your line
Awesome.
of business.
Awesome.
How is it impacting physical product startups? Are you seeing AI making a huge difference on the way these businesses approach, go to market or whatever? Yeah, tell us your take on it.
Yeah, so I am a huge advocate of using AI. I use it every day, professionally and personally. And I think once you understand, and I had the fortune of working within McKinsey on some of our earliest AI adoptions and recommendations. And so I've been like very plugged in for like three plus years now. And so yeah, I think it's incredibly valuable, especially for startups, because at the end of the day, AI can kind of bridge all of your deficiencies to some degree. I don't think AI replaces any experts or like really gets rid of all the checks and balances. Like if you've ever heard of like AI hallucinations, it just makes mistakes sometimes actually. And that's why I use an AI tool that specifically does like really good referencing and research. So it actually makes less mistakes. But at the end of the day, I think like what you gain from the AI wildly outpaces what you lose. And so for example, like any step of the development process can be improved by AI. Like product requirements document, which is like, what does your product need to do? You can feed in examples into AI and say, I need to make an example like this for my product. It'll take it from a week-long activity to a 3-hour activity. So it just makes you
Mm-hmm.
more efficient, saves you time. I use it a ton for coming up with concept innovation sketches, renders, imagery, because it's just so much faster than traditional hand sketching. I still do hand sketching for concepts. I think as a physical product designer, you need to be able to communicate your ideas, and like a quick napkin sketch is the way to do it. But then I can like
Mm-hmm.
upload that into AI, and I could have paid someone to Photoshop it. But remember how I mentioned earlier, it's like, but all of a sudden you don't have like a lot of payroll, especially as a startup. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just throw it up in the AI and have AI like redesign it and make it look much more premium. Or you can come up with like concepts for labeling or concepts for like new bottle designs or new power
Right.
tools or whatever you're working on very, very quickly. Are they 100% there? Absolutely not. Are they fully
They're
manufacturable? Certainly
concepts,
not.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a starting point that really helps like on the front end. So yeah, anything from like concept visualization to documentation, it's super great, and it's never done. Like recently we worked on a patent with AI. Like absolutely
Mm-hmm.
not done. Absolutely not ready for going to the PTO. But like man, it saved us a lot of time in the beginning, just getting everything on the page. So then when we went through it and we edited it, it was that much closer to final production ready. So yeah, I think no matter what you're doing with AI, you need to review it and make sure it's done correctly and have like expert opinions, because it does. I always say in some ways AI is amazing at like taking everything humanity's done and bringing it all together at your fingertips, kind of like Google
Mm-hmm.
2.0
Yeah, I
in some ways.
agree. Yeah.
But in other ways, like a lot of that could be wrong or not applicable, and so it's not definitively correct, but it's like a great starting point. And yeah, so I've used it
Mm-hmm.
really every step of the way and have made tremendous progress with it. And I'm just very excited about where AI is going and how much more efficient and how much more value it's going to bring. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I'm not worried it's going to like replace myself or
People.
a lot of the roles I like am working on, especially the stuff I'm excited about. Like AI is actually, in my experience, is particularly bad at being creative, because again, it's like a representation of all things we've done already. But being creative, inventing something new is like very hard for it. I have a great example where, and it's actually not even a case, like it's a case study I read where they were trying to design a new type of like sleeper couch, like futon couch. And no matter what you prompted AI, it couldn't do it because it knows what a futon is and it knows what a couch is. But to make a new version, it's like inconceivable to the AI. So yeah, I think like it allows us to be more creative and work on the stuff we're really excited to work on, the stuff that really matters, and just do it faster.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? You mentioned there is a tool you're using that's useful. Do you mind
Yeah,
sharing what
so
that is?
my favorite AI LLM, large language model, is Perplexity, perplexity.ai. And it just in my experiences does a
It's
much
my
better
favorite too.
job. Oh, okay. So there you go. So that's my main
Yeah.
tool. My main, because again, like I have to make professional recommendations where I need to check the sources and make sure everything's
Yeah.
accurate. And so that's like my
Okay.
somewhere between
That's my
ChatGPT and Google.
go-to.
It's my go-to.
And you put
Exactly.
that with their new browser Comet, man,
Oh,
it's
interesting. I haven't
a
tried it. Yeah.
use it. You'll
Okay.
love it.
There we go.
I downloaded it. What is it now? 2 weeks ago. Started
Okay.
working with it, and it's so good. Like the amount of stuff that you can get done now, just and it's Chrome base, so it's a version of Chromium, but with Perplexity built into it. So it allows you to interact with your tabs, the pages you have open. It allows you to interact with, Google Sheets and all that stuff. And it allows you, or you can basically, like it sort of runs agents in browser kind of
Oh,
idea.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's actually pretty cool tool.
Yeah, but for what it's worth, though, too, I've experimented with like as many of them as I possibly can, and that's also one of my pieces of advice is just experiment with AI. Google Gemini is pretty good as well, especially
Oh
for
yeah.
like research references, like highly accurate data.
I love
But
Notebook LM.
I haven't tried
Amazing
that
tool.
one. Interesting.
You should.
Yeah.
It's an amazing tool.
And then our team really likes Claude for like copy for
Writing.
language. Yeah, like ChatGPT and Claude are the best at actually writing like a human would write. Where's it? Yeah.
Claude
So
being better. Claude being better
that's what.
to
Yeah.
writing. I like ChatGPT for the GPTs because you can get a lot of GPTs that already have
Oh, it's
amazing
true.
prompts built in
Yep. Yep.
that
Yep.
you
Yep.
can just take advantage of. So if I'm looking for something pretty specific, then I use ChatGPT with the GPTs for like specific tasks. If I'm
Okay.
writing up, I use Claude. If I'm researching, I use Perplexity. If I am doing referencing PDFs or doing research um, that's referencing material I already have, but I wanted it in a closed environment where it's not pulling random information. Notebook LM is the best one for
Okay.
that one.
I'm gonna give it a shot
And
for
then
sure.
coding like automations and then Claude's one, but Gemini is pretty good too.
Oh, okay.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
I have tried a ton of them.
Yeah, and that's one piece of advice I give everyone when I do a talk is that like there's just so many and they change so rapidly, and your experience with it is going to be different than anyone else's because you ask it different questions, you have different needs. So I always just tell people just experiment. Like
And
don't
they just
don't
have
pick
different
one.
experiences, right? Like the
Yeah,
models are different, so they will behave. Like I said, for certain things, one is better than the other, but it doesn't mean that the other one is bad. It's just that it is better at other things, right?
exactly.
So yeah, it's and there are so many more. God, we can talk another hour about AI. Maybe we'll do
Of
that.
course, of course.
All right, Chris. I think we kept it for an hour. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming and joining us for the podcast today. I hope to see you again. Maybe we'll get you to come back and just talk AI for a while.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Super, super great conversation. Thanks for the chat. And yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Happy to come back.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.